All right, everybody, it's 5:31. It is April 21st, 2026, and this is the City Council work session. We've got one topic this evening. That is going to be the comprehensive plan update from our staff on that. And ask our clerk, Sharon Allison, to call the roll as I call the meeting to order.
Councilmember Agnew. Here. Councilmember Jackson. Here. Councilmember Risser.
Here.
Councilmember Pierce.
Here.
Mayor Humpling.
Here. We've accomplished roll call, and now the meeting topic, as I mentioned earlier, is preparing for the 2050 comprehensive plan. Wow. Manager Neal, nothing you wanted to impart before we go to absence?
Just to let you know, I mean, there's one subject on this agenda tonight because it's a big subject, and we wanted to use this as an opportunity to get some feedback from you on our current comp plan and maybe what we are going to look at going forward in terms of content and structure and process. So that's what we're here for tonight.
Very good.
Mayor and council members. So, yeah, as you said, we're here tonight to begin preparing for the 2050 comprehensive plan update. We're officially within our 3-year window that we have to complete the update. And sometime this summer, staff would like to issue an RFP to the consultant community to begin seeking a consultant to help us with this project. And so tonight we're seeking feedback from council so we can communicate to the consultants what it is that we're looking for. So first, just going to give a little background on what is a comprehensive plan and some Met Council requirements. So the comprehensive plan is an opportunity to assess where we are, where we want to go, and how we're going to get there. So it's an opportunity to engage the community to develop a vision for the future. Usually we're looking 20 years ahead. We identify the areas in our city where growth and change is going to be allowed to occur, and the areas where things we want to preserve or stay the same. It's an opportunity for us to identify community issues, priorities, and goals, and then also the action steps to identify how it is that we're going to achieve those goals in the vision. So when we're all finished, the plan will have a bunch of recommendations, and those recommendations could take the form of recommended changes to the zoning ordinance. They might be renderings depicting design guidance for buildings in the public realm. Could be plans for open space, trails, new programs or services, capital projects, or things, identifying items that need further study. A comprehensive plan does not guarantee that any change will happen. Market conditions, property owner decisions, and city budget priorities significantly influence the implementation of a comprehensive plan. It does not determine the affordability level of housing or whether it is renter or owner occupied. It doesn't decide specific businesses or industries will locate in the area, and it doesn't require that development will look exactly like the plan renderings. Typically those images are just inspiration for kind of what we're looking for, or they're examples of what we would like to see. So we're here because the Met Council adopted Imagine 2050. That's the Met Council's regional development guide for the Twin Cities Metro. That's essentially the comprehensive plan for the region. So that sets the regional vision, values, and goals. And it includes regional system plans for things like transportation, water, parks and trails, and housing. And so the Metropolitan Land Planning Act is a state law that requires cities to update local comprehensive plans every 10 years for alignment with the metropolitan system plan. So that's so that those regional services like transit, transportation infrastructure, wastewater services, so that those things can be provided in a cost-effective and efficient manner. So cities have until December 31st, 2028 to complete their comprehensive plan updates. So here on the left, you see the required plan elements that are required by statute that we have to address in our comprehensive plan. And so each one of those includes a long list of details and things that are required to be addressed and included. And then on the right, you see what Edina has in the 2040 comprehensive plan. So you can see that we've kind of gone above the minimum requirements and included things that are not required to be included by statute. So we're assuming you want to continue with kind of the same topics we have, I guess, unless we hear otherwise from you tonight. But that would be kind of one of the things we're looking for feedback on. We think that we have a really good foundation with the comprehensive plan that we have. You know, we did a lot of work the last time, and obviously with all of our small area plans that we've done. So on the spectrum of like a complete rewrite to a review and refresh, we think this update could be closer to a review and refresh if that's what the council desires. We would also look to incorporate the city's values more into this comprehensive plan, since those are more prominently used today than they were at the time the 2040 plan was written. And so as I said at the beginning, we're going to be writing the RFP this summer to the consultant community. We need to communicate what it is that we're looking for beyond just the minimum requirements. So we wanted to just have a check-in with council to hear what's on your mind, what are your expectations for the process, what is it that you'd like to be included. So with that, I'll turn it back to the council for discussion.
I had one quick question on the last slide. Is climate new this year, or it was new 10 years ago?
Yeah, that is a new requirement for this.
Okay.
For
this
Yep.
cycle.
Yep. So fortunately, we have a climate action plan that will address a lot of this, what's required there.
So, we no longer have a Human Rights Commission. Who would take that chapter on?
Well, ultimately, I think the consultant would be responsible for kind of overseeing like the drafting and setting up of each chapter. And then, you know, I think all of our commissions are probably going to be given the opportunity to comment. And, you know, certainly there's probably just certain chapters that are more applicable to each commission, but, you know, any commission could provide comments on our human rights chapter if that's something we want to continue to include.
I just want to make sure that somebody owns it.
Maybe the MAC.
Maybe the map.
Maybe.
Yeah, and maybe we ask each of the commissions to review it as well, just to see if there's something. I would like a, you know, resident, citizen input on that, not just by the consultants.
Do we have an overview of the, or maybe can you voice one, the expectations that we have of the consultant and the role that they play throughout the process compared to maybe the roles that staff play or commission members play?
Yeah, that's something that we would have to articulate in the RFP, kind of here's the things that staff is gonna do, and here's the thing that the consultant is gonna do. The comprehensive plan update is a really big job, so that's why we have to use a consultant. So we're typically relying on them a lot for community engagement, kind of setting up and the writing, although staff contribute a lot, I think, to kind of the content in the plan and setting it up. Probably help with like GIS and maps and figures and things like that.
Okay.
So, and then staff is doing a lot to like coordinate and, you know, plan community engagement and kind of direct the process as well.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about, you know, where the use of AI could come into play as well. And I'm not saying we'd want to just leave it all up to AI to rewrite it, but I think that there are a lot of advancements that could provide some really good framework. And as we look at, I'll just say consulting in general, I'm probably speaking generally from the technology sector, but I do know that there's a very large shift that we're seeing in the services that consultants are providing because of that. And so I think it would serve us well to iterate on our expectations of a consultant, maybe be less reliant if and where possible, because these consulting engagements are rather costly. But I don't think that AI can take over community engagement, right?
Right.
So I'm not suggesting we don't go that route in its entirety, but just being very specific with the roles that we need them to play.
Yeah.
Are you saying less reliant in the use of AI, or we be less reliant on human?
We could be less reliant on paid consultants by better leveraging AI technology. Even because I'm sure a lot of like the designs that end up in something like this is an area that is probably rather costly, but could be cheaper.
One way I've heard AI use is going through community comments, and then it has to be, you know, double checked very closely by a human. But I know that there are consultants out there who are trying to figure out how to use AI to summarize community comments.
Yeah, I'm sure you had thousands of comments on the last comprehensive plan, so something like that can summarize them would be very helpful.
Yeah, to go through it and pick out themes and
Yeah.
stuff. And again, like I said, it has to be overseen by a human, because it can have inaccuracies, but that's
Yeah.
one of the uses I've heard.
I mean, with the 108 responses that we got from the written comments at the underpass project, I read it all, but then I put that into ChatGPT, and it's like 26 in this category, 68 in this, and it does some of that summarization too. So it is a helpful tool paired with human review.
Right. What we recommend in like the contractual language for that is that if AI is used, that there is a statement, AI generated, human verified.
Okay.
So it makes it really transparent.
Yeah.
One question I have is, the appendixes, and just thinking.
What, Julie?
The appendices,
Appendices.
and, specifically the Greater Southdale Design Guidelines. And really, the way those have had, Mick Johnson and a reviewer and screening projects, and you go back and you watch council meetings where it is really clear that if the plan does not meet those guidelines, it's not gonna advance. And I know we've sort of scaled that back a little bit, but my concern is just being really transparent with residents about how, even if it's a chapter in the comprehensive plan, and I worked with Germana Potterlini on the environmental chapter, and there was some
2008.
frustration about feeling like it wasn't really getting applied. And at the same time, there was such a, and as things progressed, it was so clear that the appendix for the Greater Southdale Design Guidelines really, it carried so much more weight than environment and some of the other chapters. So just being really transparent about how, if it's included, it can really carry a lot of weight. And I know the other thing, there was, and this is way back to 2005, the Southdale Transportation, I can't remember what it was called, study, and it was for Hennepin County and the city of Edina. It was about that thick. And it really advised incremental change. And what we're going for is transformational. And it was specifically not included in the comprehensive plan. And I know, we have, even though in that study it was noting that we do have issues with congestion going back to 2005. And so, I think if there was a way of articulating, that with whatever plan emerges, saying we are very purposefully pursuing transformational change. And although we have had other studies that go in a different direction, we are specifically not including those. Just for transparency, I think, that could be helpful. But I would love to know more about the specifics of the required plan, because I look at natural systems and I'm kind of like, whoa. So I think I need to do a little more research on
And
that.
the city's climate caucus will be covering that this month. If you go on that meeting.
Okay.
That's what our topic is this month.
Okay.
And if you want to see the minimum requirements for each of these sections, it's all on my council's website, so I'd be happy to forward that to you.
That would be
Like
lovely. Thank you.
I'm gonna say this, but I'm not sure. I really wanna do this, but I'm gonna say it like I do. And then we'll see. I think I'd like to participate in drafting the RFP. I'm sure that's gonna come to council and everybody will have a look at it. But I'd be willing to do something, a little grease on it. And what's in my head is, I don't have any doubt that the process that we use to complete the work is solid. But I think one of the biggest challenges is the way we present that work it's just hard for people to engage with it. And there's so many chapters, and the website does a nice job of saying, well, here's where you go for that, right? But it's still hard if people they have a specific question to glean that information out of the comprehensive plan. And so I was actually thinking, which is why I asked Member Agnew the question on AI, I was actually thinking something that might be in reverse, but I'm not sure how to do it. And so asking the consultant, as an example, what, maybe there's certain data elements or metadata that we want to have in each document so that if we wanted to, we could load this into our own data lake and have an AI agent run over the top of it. And so then if a resident wants to know, they can just simply ask a question, and then this tool would do the hard work of figuring out, well, what are the right documents that answer that particular question, so then people could interact with it dynamically. But that probably is more expensive from an RFP perspective, because you're going to have more requirements, I think you might, of the consultant. I'm not quite sure. But I think it would be neat if we would be able to do something like that. And then the other thing I think about is ADA. I assume the comprehensive plan is ADA. I don't really know. It's on the website. And so there's graphs in there, and there's, and so then how do we ensure that that it is ADA compliant? And you could also use AI over the top of that requirement to make sure that people can access information in the way that they need to.
So were you thinking like an AI, like a chat box kind of, where you could ask questions about what's in the comprehensive plan and things like that? Yeah. Okay.
I'm curious about a specific land use element, and then it would come back, well, here's the answer to that.
Okay.
And then it would link to sources. And so you could write a custom GPT for that. However, then my follow-on from that would be we have to make sure we have sound AI policies for this data, because you probably don't, I don't know, maybe we don't care. I guess it is in the public domain. They can go to the website and see it. So.
Well, and that's where I was thinking, maybe instead of,
What were you gonna ask?
Oh, no.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
maybe instead of it being an explicit ask that we make to the consultants within the RFP, it could be an ask that we make to the city of making the website in its entirety. I don't know if that's something you're already thinking about.
It does seem like it's something that lives beyond the adoption of your plan. So recall, we did have a chatbot on our website that would have provided this, but we cut that as part of the 2026 budget and dropped that from the site. So that's something we would want to budget for 2028 or whenever the comp plan is adopted, and then it would be taught how to specifically search the comp plan, in addition to whatever other chatbot functionality you want on the website.
And I think I'm more saying, are there requirements of the output in the data that we could have as a requirement for the consultant, so that the official documents are now searchable, they have the right metadata, we're calling everything the same thing so that you can search through documents, that kind of.
We agree that's important, and our digital accessibility guidelines require contracts for new software and for reports like this to be fully accessible for that reason.
No, after we wrote the environmental chapter, someone said, you don't even mention trees. We had a whole section on trees, but because of the way the PDF was created, a search wouldn't find it.
That's exactly, yeah.
And so, taking both of your comments together, when we did write that chapter, our committee spent a lot of time saying, we want this to be simple, accessible, and usable. And the consultant went back and added a whole lot of filler, I would call it, sort of, this is what the environment is. And it was more written like a term paper than it was like a usable document. And we had worked very, very hard to make it a usable document that was simple, easy to access, showed our values and hopes that it would be, you know, a guide for the future. And it really basically, you know, it got superseded by the climate action plan, but it ended up being this lovely term paper instead of a
I think that is one of our goals as well, is to kind of remove some of the fluff and make it clear, like, what the important information is. So moving like the vision statements and the goals and policies up to the beginning of each chapter versus being buried at the end, so that it's easier to find the important stuff. And yeah, like taking out some of that more narrative that's not really critical.
Yeah, thank you.
I think one of the threshold things for us to think about is, having been through this a couple of times, and then one other visioning exercise in the past would be to think about whether we want to just stick with the required plan elements, or we do it like we've traditionally done it, and taken on more topics to make the document more expansive, to make it a more effective planning tool. And that's the pathway we followed in the past, because it helps us cover more parts of our community that we want to be thinking about in the future, and then be able to reference back to see where it was we thought we were going, and are we heading that direction or not? Because there's some guesswork involved, you know, in what you think your community might look like 10 years from now, 20 years from now. The other thing that I don't see here, that, and maybe it gets baked in there, is the shifting demographics of our state and even our own community, and how we factor that in, you know. Just think about what's our economy doing. You know, our state is now, its GDP is half the national average. We're birthing 10,000 fewer kids a year. What might be the potential impact on our school districts? And I'm sure the school district is looking at this as well. So I think somewhere along the line, we got to be thinking about demographics and the role they play relative to what we should be planning for. Because we want to make sure that we keep our school district vital, for example, and keep our town fully occupied with a trail of people that are at all different ages, you know, so that we get this pipeline of people that occupy every strata of age. And then something we're doing over at the tab, as we go through the resetting of the regional solicitation, we've gotten away from DEI, and we're just looking at the human rights aspect, and Carolyn was talking about that. We're starting to look at, it's still a subjective sort of determination, but community impact. And I think I can pull some data, and they've had a consultant helping them on how you go about setting the plate for community impact and what you look for there. And that may be something we can pick up in advance of even hiring a consultant, or having somebody else just help us on that particular part of it. Because as to your point, we don't have a Human Rights Relations Commission anymore. Might we need an outside consultant that just knows that area, help us with what now is called over there at least community impact.
There's a map that is kind of weird in the land use chapter that is what is it called? Building condition, okay? And it's figure 3.7, and it goes through and it grades everybody's house on excellent, good, average, fair, or substandard, which is, I just kind of find that worth thinking about, and maybe Met Council requires it, but I did talk to a neighbor a few years ago who was upset because I think theirs was shown as fair, and nobody ever, you know, and that changes so much. So I, you know,
Yeah.
anyhow.
If I may, I think that has to do with local government aid.
It does.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
much more important in greater Minnesota than it is in the city.
Yeah, well, in cities that need local government
Yep.
aid.
It could be helpful to have a little, descriptor on why this is in here. Because it is a map where people kind of go, what? My house is excellent.
Yes, because it's all yellow and green, we don't get local government aid.
What are folks' thoughts on like if it's a full overhaul or more of an edit update?
I'm in favor of an edit update. And I gave Addison and Jimmy Bennett a long list of things that I had experienced that needed some tweaking, but I really like the areas of change format. I think it's a good compromise, so that there's stability on some of it, but also an ability to go 21st century.
I would like to get back to the mayor's point, though. Do we want to just do the elements that are required, or do we want to do additional chapters? And are the additional chapters enforced the same as the required ones, or are they kind of like?
Well, so that's a good point. So anything we include in the comprehensive plan, there's certain things that like we're required to include. So like for land use, right, we have to do a future land use map. So if we change that, if we're gonna amend it, then we have to go through a comprehensive plan amendment process, and it's reviewed by the Met Council, and they have to agree to a change, right? So if there are policies or things in these non-required chapters, and then down the road, if we wanted to change it, it's not really subject to like anything they care about, but if we really wanna change the document, then we gotta like submit it to them as a change and have them review it, and it may not be worth having it included in the comprehensive plan. I actually had a conversation with Chief Slam about this, how like the community services and facilities chapter talks about police and fire, and it's at like a very high level, and that it's probably fine if it stays that way, because they're working on like a more detailed operations plan that would kind of get more into the weeds. That probably doesn't make sense to have in a comprehensive plan. So some of these ones that are not required, I think it probably makes sense to keep it more at a high level versus like a more detailed strategic plan, or not include them at all. But having them kind of the way we have them now, I think is fine.
Yeah.
They're just maybe not as valuable and used as much as the required ones.
Well, and we found it helpful on the Energy and Environment Commission to sort of capture where we were and where we hope to go. And, whether it's used or not, is optional, right? It's just a guide, but we thought that we would capture sort of our learned experience. And I think the health chapter was like really well written, if I remember correctly. Same sort of thing. They sort of talked about what their learnings had been and where they saw things going.
Pete, I think to the point you raised, if we took that approach that Carolyn's talking about, but we run into a chapter where we see that things have changed so much, so exponentially, or that we think they're gonna change exponentially in the next few years, then we should be more aggressive and more foresightful and a little more innovative than we might otherwise be with a sort of modest upgrade, if you will.
Are we able to get that view? Like you do your assessment. I think it makes sense to do the refresh, but it would be good to get a summary or an assessment of which areas you think we maybe should do a full rewrite, or more of a refresh than a light refresh, or however you want about it.
Yeah, I think, each chapter has goals and policies. So I think what we would do is, through our community engagement, put all those out there and ask like, is this still an important goal? Right? Like which ones do we want to keep? Which ones do we want to change or get rid of? What ones are missing that aren't included? So something kind of like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think any way you can find easy, simple ways that more people can, I know we're just talking about us, but more people can engage would be good. And that seems like a pretty easy way to do it.
Yeah.
You know, having the two of you on our council, do you think that we should have a chapter that's dedicated to technology?
Community tech, Wi-Fi,
I think that is in community services,
I think
isn't
it
it?
is.
No.
No?
I don't know.
So community services and facilities is police, fire, schools, and libraries, I believe.
I am positive there's
It might be.
communications and IT
Okay.
stuff in there.
Can you still access
Under
it
which
on the
one?
website? Yeah. Let's put it in there.
Community services and facilities. I think the question might be more broad than that, though, of like, and so I don't know, I'm kind of noodling on what should it or could it entail.
Or what I mean when I say that?
I mean, I kind of think I get what you mean, but I'm trying to marry what it means to a comprehensive plan.
Yeah, it's
So,
more of a strategic
where-
plan kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. It's something, like I think about, you talk about these microgrids. And then you could step back and look at the current comprehensive chapters and have a section on technology and how that applies to each chapter. And so I'm totally just playing your idea forward. So for transportation, what does that mean? Does that mean we need to have fully integrated, I don't know, transit, or I don't know.
Apps that tell you where to park at certain nodes within the community.
But I'm thinking, when you ask that, when that need is there, we've done the work to have the infrastructure to support it. That's where I was going.
Okay.
And so like you could have a thematic technology section in each of these. When I think about cooling, if we needed to have a data center here, then that has implications to your grid, to your water resources. So that's what so I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Interesting thought too about just having at least a conversation. You see some of these cities know that are doing a moratorium on data centers. They've got big empty warehouse space and other things. For us, it would be all kind of infill. It's possible, maybe like some of the small, they're doing a couple up in North Minneapolis. A couple of small data centers. I guess I was thinking about technology in having sat through that day-long session that when I went to that U.S. Conference Mayor's Leadership meeting, and we went out to Google for a day and listened to them talk about where things were moving and how cities were using it. And I know we're using it and taking a cautious approach, but not only increase the efficiency of people that work for you, and I guess the question is how, you know, in terms of transportation systems planning or housing strategies. But I think, you know, in some instances it may create the need for a lesser number of people working for the city. I mean, we see that, and we see what Google's laying out 30,000 people. You know, and nobody wants to see anybody lose their job, but the responsibility is also to taxpayers to look at what's the most effective and efficient way we can deliver the services that they expect at the highest possible level. Seems to me that it's becoming more and more a technology question.
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer to it. No.
Well, I also think about the security element of it with Mythos, which is like the newest model that's like super good at breaking into things.
Yeah.
What is the impact then to the number of institutions that are deciding to air gap? And how does that translate to our operations as a city too?
That sounds to me like a technology action plan, not a comprehensive plan. Even though comprehensive, I guess, is everything, right? This, I think, I tie it more to land use, than otherwise.
You tie what to land use?
The comprehensive plan to land use and the need for streets and sewer and transportation, that's kind of the purpose behind it. I think having a technology action plan would be a great idea, but I just don't think that this is the document for that. I think that's a rabbit hole that we would go down and that would become its own thing.
And that's kind of where I was leaning, but then I'm looking at out the window at the power lines, and I'm thinking about all of the infrastructure that is land use dependent from a power, a connectivity perspective. So, I don't know, I could see infusing it in different areas, but that doesn't mean that there couldn't also be value in a more collective strategy on technology use, but maybe we need to just think about the ways that we're infusing.
Maybe land use and
tech
connectivity
Yeah.
is what I'm hearing. That
There's some woven in, like in this section on community services, the third goal is make cost-effective use of technology to meet public safety goals. So that's just in that chapter. My it's woven into others too.
But I think that is the land use aspect of it and what's gonna be needed, you know, when we tear up everybody's front yard every 3 years with another line going through, right? And we don't have any control over that, but,
Or saying we want to bring it into public, like ownership too.
right. Well, I wanna tie it to land use. And the other things are very valuable, but like how it impacts the budget and things like that, I think that's a separate, worthy of a separate study.
I was just meaning that, like, if we're gonna be adding new fiber lines every 2 years, like,
Oh, yeah.
that's a land use thing of like, is there
Yeah.
a better way?
Yeah, no. But could there, well, let's use our imagination, right?
I think about it, I think that's what I was trying to describe. It's not implementing technology, it's making sure our city is prepared for whatever comes. And so I'm totally making this stuff up. But if for whatever reason we think 30 years from now, Edina needs to have its own HAL, its own computer system to run the city services. So where would you do that? And you'd probably, I would think we'd probably do it in the industrial zone. Well, does the land use policy support something like that? Does it have enough resources there to be able to support it? And today it doesn't. But if that were in the comprehensive plan, then we would be making decisions to make sure that in future it has the resources that it needs. But we wouldn't be doing, you know, from a technology standpoint, you wouldn't have an action plan to actually go build that.
No, I don't think any of us have any idea what AI is gonna do to society on a 10-year time frame, let alone 20.
This is really a 10-year plan. It gets updated every 10 years.
Yeah.
I suspect the same thing has happened to you, Carrie and Madison, and everybody else who works for the city that has happened to all of us, and that is that the job of being a city council person or a staff member, it's getting more complex all the time and more time consuming. And that's kind of one of the main takeaways I had from that session. They had the head of technology for LA, city of LA there. That it's helping people like you in a planning department do your job more effectively and efficiently, and taking some of that time that you'd otherwise be spending on a report, like for the meeting tonight on 7600 Park Lawn, where that might have taken you a week to get that stuff ready. It might take a matter of hours, and then there's more ideas constantly coming that way. So. Seems to me that that needs to be a part of our thinking. How do we continue to deliver that high quality of service to constituents the best possible, the best bang for the buck.
The one concern, this is a little different, but thinking about that heat zone map that we saw and looking at these categories, and you could go, oh, that would be under climate, but then you also have to say, oh, no, that's land use. And, or at least there needs to be something in land use that addresses the need to mitigate the disparity in terms of heat in Edina. And so, just ensuring that the public commons is maintained, that we can have trees, that we're not encroaching into that space, if maybe we're expanding it if possible. But, just thinking about projects that we've seen and sort of, I think about the plan to sort of step down onto 9 Mile Creek Trail and the railings, and where is that sort of protection for existing public space and really, and then you could also say that's natural systems. If we can get really serious or make it possible for trees in the areas where we really need them, thinking about our southeast quadrant, all of that. And I know I'm speaking in very broken sentences
No, I
here,
get
but
what you're saying.
yeah, because I know that's where the density is going to keep happening. And so I think we just need to be very purposeful about trying to carve out a space to mitigate.
Well, I think uploading the climate action plan into the comprehensive plan in some way would be a big part of that, because it has the list of to-dos for trees and green space. Parks also, has the charge to protect and expand the amount of green space we have in the city. So I think, what I take from that is, do we have plans that are out there that needed to be uploaded into our comprehensive plan that haven't been in the past? Or, that have come since the last one? Whether there's the new bike and ped plan that's combining all the previous ones. Just make sure that those get uploaded and if need be, refreshed.
But also making it possible for somebody to walk down Valley View to Cub and not necessarily go to a park or use a natural trail, but use.
Sure. Sure, that would be transportation, and they would have an environmental overlay on what they're doing.
I was kind of thinking about that, last time we did some future planning was with Future IQ and David Burrow, was that maybe 10 years ago?
2015.
2014.
So a little over 10 years ago, yeah. And it all started with kind of big tabletop exercises with, I think, as I remember, 250 people from our community gathered out at Raymar, and people coming up with their ideas on what they saw we would need in the town over the next 20, 30, 40 years. And that evolved into a specific idea. Nodes and, what was it, nodes and?
Nodes and modes.
Nodes and modes, yeah. So it all kind of starts with people. And maybe that helps drive us a little bit too, but I guess you gotta have the topics you want to cover with them first. And, so Julie, were you thinking about there might be some reason to get back to basics as opposed to having a more comprehensive sort of look at our community?
I think my biggest concern was compartmentalizing and how it can end up being something that results in, we didn't get here accidentally or purposefully. We just are here, and I'm looking at the heat map, and you look at where those spots are and try to figure out, and interestingly enough, a lot of them are along the promenade.
Where's that, France?
But no,
It's a promenade,
yeah.
I see.
So just trying to think about, well, what is it that is going on here? What can we do? And then in the industrial zone, we've got a lot going on there, but we've got housing in the industrial zone. Chowan Park, I'm seeing a lot of red. But just, you know, being mindful of not just the parks, but also, you know, where is the commercial and where are the areas where you've got people who might not have a car, you know? And the maps, you know, it's interesting that is a reality for some people in Edina, and just trying to figure out, okay, how is our infrastructure gonna look so that it's not gonna be as miserable on August day to get to the grocery store, or, you know, I guess you're right, getting back to basics is part of it, but thinking in a way, and it's hard because there's so many balls in the air, and how do you move forward in a way that truly is sustainable? And I don't know the answer to that, but I do really keep coming back to the commons because I walk a lot and on the sidewalks and everything, and it just, that experience changes so dramatically depending on the time of the year. And, you know, what can we do to improve that? I don't know.
I have one more question. Member Jackson, when you talked about comp plan being land use, just help explain the inclusion of the commissions, their plans. So human rights, health, those aren't related to land use.
Arts and culture maybe too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. They're not, yeah. So there's a land use chapter that deals with, you know, how are we going to use our land throughout the whole city? That's where we have to adopt a future land use map that you typically see when we give presentations for rezonings and things like that. So we're identifying like what type of uses do we want where and at what intensity and scale or residential density. That's one of the requirements from the Met Council, is that we have to guide land at sufficient density to accommodate the growth that they've allocated for us. So that is all in the land use chapter.
That's where the planning commission would comment on that.
Right, yep. So the planning commission would be particularly involved in that, though they're kind of, the whole thing ends up going through the planning commission.
But that's their focus.
But that's their focus, yeah.
Okay.
So every commission gets, like, ETC will review transportation, EEC will look at either climate or environment, whatever.
And water.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of when we were talking about the technology, like it might be, I guess, would it be okay to ask you to think about if you did a technology chapter, what the scope of that might be? And like, don't spend a lot of time on it, because we could go in 100 different ways, but it'd be good to just kind of, and you could probably lean on myself, remember Agnew, because the other thought, there's a lot of research now recently about us being overly connected as a community, and having these areas in I don't know if cities have them, but some commercial buildings have these dead zones where your phones don't work, and you're intended to go, you're not supposed to use earbuds and those types of things, to just get you completely disconnected, because there's better health benefits if you're taking time to do things like that. And so I was thinking about that one as it related to the health, but.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah, well, kind of on that note, like one thing we've discussed as a staff with respect to like our values, right, is like that they should be kind of interwoven into all the chapters, right? So like, you know, our value for health is that like we have a health in all policies approach, right? So like looking at health in terms of land use and transportation and water and parks, right? So kind of what you guys have been saying makes me think of like the value for stewardship, and like we should be using technology to be good stewards and make sure residents are getting the best bang for their buck, and you know, we use our resources wisely. So I could see, and I don't know whether the answer is to have a separate technology chapter or that it's just kind of interwoven into all of these chapters, but we could do it either way.
And if you did it that way, you'd have some thematic statement. Yeah.
Or a to-do list on each of the chapters. And your chapter will be complete if it has, answers the question about technology.
So how are we using
How does
technology
affect your
efficiently?
area?
Yeah, so we could do it that way.
Yeah, the other ones were put in there too. This was before we had the grid that's on all the walls, the values overlay and the pillars. And it also, each of them sort of had somebody who owned it. And so, you know, I don't know if we want to do it the same way again. I like the idea of involving the commissions because, you know, we've got these wonderful experts who want to be a part of planning our city. But because they owned it, then it's worthy of having a chapter because it'll get done.
But when you do, having written the first chapter with Jemana on environment, it is hard to work super hard on that and then get it in the comp plan and then kind of realize that it doesn't have the same significance as the required chapters. And so I do.
In what way?
In that it's not followed as rigorously. And so it kind of tees things up for disappointment. And you have people thinking that their work has a weight that is not true. So again, kind of going back to that transparency. And I think, would it make sense to have those goals and aims in a separate space, you know, not necessarily the comp plan?
So I just want to be a little gentle on the environmental chapter. Whenever you do something de novo, completely unique and new in the world, the first iteration, people aren't accustomed to working with it. So what you guys did was so groundbreaking and different. It was really a big, big deal. And now the rest of the world, just in this comprehensive plan, is falling into what you did in 2008. So I'm like to be more generous and kind to the way it happened. I know you were all disappointed that it wasn't used more, but it was so groundbreaking that the world wasn't quite ready for it yet.
I just have a memory of being in Lunds and having Keith come up to me and go, the only reason it was put in was because it was a deal with the Greater Southdale Area Plan. And so there was this, they worked it out so that the Southdale design thing would go in. And because, and I don't know if that's true or not, but it was, because we were trying to figure out why everything we were doing was just going, and to see there wasn't somebody like McJohnson for the environment chapter. So, you know, I appreciate what you, but if it's not gonna be, but I think my point, if it's not gonna have the same kind of seriousness, or there's not gonna be the resources to implement what people are working on, it might be better to house it someplace outside of the comp plan.
Only the future will know.
True.
I think you're getting at a good point, though, that like kind of all cities struggle with, of like writing a plan that can actually be implemented, or that like the city has the capacity to do. Like we put a lot of things in plans sometimes that are ambitious and they'd be great, and maybe we have the capacity to do it, maybe we don't. Sometimes it's just a good way to articulate what it is that we want, and then we can try to figure out how to do it. But that's why I said, like at the beginning too, like it doesn't mean that everything in there is going to happen, right? It's going to be dependent on market conditions, council priorities, budget realities. all of that.
It's opportunity costs.
Exactly, yeah, you're right.
So,
Yep.
you know,
So you end up with a document, I guess, that's a combination of aspirational, in some sense of where you might want to see your town heading over the next 20 years, 30 years, or where you think it might be heading, people's views of that. And then you've got the sort of reactionary part of it too, where you're trying to meet the requirements of the Met Council and trying to anticipate where you could accommodate from a land use standpoint, the additional housing that they say. It's not a mandate, but we'd like to have you take your fair share, and here's your fair share.
Right.
How are you gonna do that?
Yep, doesn't mean it will happen, we just have to show where we would allow it to happen.
Sometimes the market has outraced the plan. I mean, that 08 plan, I mean, there was quite a bit of activity over in that Saltville area, where we had to go back and amend it to allow more density.
Right.
Because that was what the market was requiring in order to do the things we had to do.
Yep, I think the current plan, we've got the densities in a good range today to meet the Met Council goals. So it's just the tweaks to the land use plan that you talked about.
Yeah, well, that's good to know too.
Addison, are there any optional chapters? You've got the required.
Well, yeah, everything that's on there that's not one of the required elements is totally optional.
I just remember last year they made such a big deal about the economic competitiveness chapter. And this year, this decade, they eliminated it.
Yeah.
So in a meeting I was in, they implied that there was a list of optional chapters.
Yeah,
Do they
I-
actually have that list,
I
or is it
think-
just up to us?
I think the last go around, they were kind of pushing economic competitiveness and maybe like climate as like optional ones that they encouraged. This year they haven't given us like specific things that are optional that they're encouraging. They've just noted what the required ones are. So yeah, economic competitiveness, that's one we could include, but maybe it'd be more useful as like a separate document. Because again, as the economy changes, if we want to change our strategy, like I don't know that we want to have to go through the process of amending our comprehensive plan and submitting it to the Met Council for review, just to have them say, yep, that's okay for you to change this document, when it's not even something they're requiring anyway. But there's pros and cons, right? Because it's useful to kind of look at everything at the same time and think strategically about how all of these are interconnected. Different ways to do it.
Economic cooperativeness, why, I mean, it just seems so weird.
That was the term they wanted 20 years ago.
With other metro areas in the country.
That's another, just using that as an example, that's another one of the chapters where I believe it's about 40 or 50 pages, and there's about 4 or 5 pages that matter.
Right.
And I just wonder, as this whole document has grown to be 4,000 pages, I mean, how many?
4,600.
4,600 pages. So that might even be a challenge for AI, who knows? But like, is there a need to have a 50-page chapter when we can say it in 4 pages?
We should have one of those marathon reading events where we read the entire comp plan.
Oh, you have a one up next week? Those marathon meetings?
Yes.
I have never read the economic competitive chapter. I should do that. That's fascinating. Okay.
Well, it's interesting that they decided not to have that in the time when we really need to be thinking about it from a state standpoint. Right.
That might be the chapter for demographics. Well, Addison, did we make it easier or worse?
Yeah, I think we got some good feedback here.
This is helpful.
It's helpful, yep, to hear where you're at and what you're thinking about. So I think it was good feedback. Thank you.
What are some of your thoughts from a staffing standpoint, having looked at this plan for several years?
Yeah, I think this was our thoughts. We were thinking more along the lines of just an edit, not an overhaul. We put in so much work on that last one with all the small area plans, and getting the density ranges in a good spot. So I think it's just I think what we were hearing tonight is along the lines of what staff was thinking as well.
Yeah, we're running out of areas of potential change, aren't we? So,
Yeah, the one thing we'll,
big area Kate likes,
yeah, the one area we will take a little closer look at, you recall, is the Grandview District and then along Vernon, where the planning commission wants to take a closer look at that area in terms of the land use.
Didn't that University of Minnesota resilience study also identify?
That's the area that they identified, and that's what they
Vernon,
want.
France, and
Right.
some of those higher density or higher traffic roads.
Yep.
amongst the array of areas of potential change that we haven't touched is 70th and Cahill. And somebody, well, I guess it's for sale.
Oh, the retail on the
They've
corner,
got,
yes.
They got a lot of pride. They got a lot of pride in the property, and it's priced at twice of, at least somebody told me it was twice the level it was worth for redevelopment, so.
We have a small area plan for that particular node. I don't think our plan aligns with the owner's price expectations.
Yeah, that's another way to put it.
And also revisit the broader Cahill district plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to finish
That'll be
it.
part of the land use discussion, for sure.
Well, and that would be economic competitiveness too. I think that was the first thing, that just that jobs number was so huge in that area. That jumps off the page.
Very curious, Bill, you remember how many acres that is over there?
The greater Cahill district?
More?
The whole Cahill
The whole
district, you
thing?
mean?
The whole Malin property?
Oh, just that.
Maybe 8?
8?
Yeah.
So I would say no more than 8.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you all for the feedback. Very helpful.
All right, we stand adjourned.
All right.